Hello and welcome back to Black Mental Health Matters. Now, our mission here is to encourage open dialogue around mental health among Black communities. I'm your host, Amanda Eke, and today we have very special guests with us discussing from pain to empowerment, how reconnecting with Africa enhances mental health. Now, we have some very, very special guests today. Now, we can begin with Garrick in the corner over here. Garrick, please do introduce yourself, and we'll go one after the other after him.
Hi, I am Garrick Bollier. I'm located in Baltimore. I'm from Jersey. What else do I say? Is that it?
Yeah, sure. Whatever you want to
Yeah,
introduce yourself as. Thank you, Gary.
yeah, that's it.
Who is next? Dr. Rabina, you want to go next?
Sure, I can go. I'm Dr. Robina Onwonga. I'm from Maryland, originally roots in Kenya, and I am a business and counseling psychologist.
Awesome. Dr. Jonisha.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonisha Hickson. I'm from New Jersey as well, Jersey City to be exact. I'm currently a school psychologist at a school in Washington, D.C., and also the vice chair of the DC staff.
Thank you. All right, who's next? Dr. Taylor.
Hi, I'm Dr. Taylor J. Langley. I'm currently a counseling and sports psychologist in college athletics.
Awesome. Last but not least.
Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Krista Edwards. I'm a school psychologist in Ottawa, Canada, and also the co-founder of the Black School Psychologists Network.
Awesome. All right. So we have such a great panel of folks today. So let's kind of go into it. Now, the big thing, you all took a trip, as we were talking about before we started, just about recently, 1 to 2 months ago, you all took a big trip together to Nairobi, Kenya. Now tell us how a trip to Nairobi, Kenya even came about. How did all 5 of you lovely people even come together to take a trip together? Tell us the ins and outs of how this all came together. Dr. Robina, let's start with you. Tell us a bit about how this group, how y'all came together, and what inspired a trip to Kenya.
Yeah, so I can start us off and then I'll let someone else speak to how we met at different points in our lives. So a big part of the reason that I wanted to take the trip is to give my friends and other folks who are within like my family, my chosen family, a chance to experience the motherland. So as I mentioned, my family's originally from Kenya. I was born in the States, and so I've had the privilege and at times just that whole like diasporic feeling you have of being maybe bicultural, of being in 2 different types of communities. And so I have been feeling for like a while that I wanted to be able to have some of my friends who were also born in the States and who don't have necessarily like know what their direct connection to Africa is, to be able to experience it in a more personalized and intimate way. So my birthday was in March, and it was my 30th. And you know how we do as Black people, we always gotta make a whole occasion out of stuff. So I wanted to have to celebrate with folks in a way, and in a big way, and that was a way that came to me that I wanted to do. So I put together the trip, and it wasn't just 5 of us; it was actually 19 of us, including myself, who ended up making it out the group chat. So really to celebrate birthday, life, and then to get folks really connected to just being in a space where we are the majority and that's our homeland, and something that we could feel like a deeper connection to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Anyone else like to
I can't
add
hear
it?
you. Can y'all hear me?
Would anyone else like to add on to that? So it was a birthday trip that was planned, and it was kind of y'all just came together to kind of get it out the group chat, and then you finally made it happen. Tell us a little bit, and let's go to you, Dr. Krista. Tell us a bit about how did you all meet? Are you all just friends through academia? All of y'all seem to really be in the field of something. You all have PhDs or whatever your higher degree may be. How did you all even meet?
Yeah, so Robina and I did our graduate school together with along with some other folks on the trip. And then everyone else I just know through personal connections on Twitter. Like,
Wow.
and I was connected to them through Robina. Like, Black Twitter is a real close-knit virtual Black community. And so that's how we've known each other. And a lot of us, like, we just built virtual relationships that fostered into like real friendships. And we met for the first time in person on this trip in Kenya. So that was really monumental. And I know that Robina knows everyone else in different capacities as well.
Yeah. My goodness. So that was the first time a lot of y'all had met in real life. Garrick, tell me, how was that? You meet a lot of people. They say, let's go on a trip to Africa. What's the first thing that goes through your mind?
I never been to Africa, so for me, I was like, I was down. I wanted to go. I was wanting to go to Africa. I didn't know where to go in Africa as well. So like in Robina, she like needs to do event planning and all that stuff because her itinerary was like on point as well. So like when it comes to travel, like I like to travel. So like when it comes to traveling, like she organized everything. She had it's like a Canva. What was it called? Yeah, like a Canva, just everything. So all I had to do was really just drop the money, and that was really amazing. So versus like me trying to go to Africa with some of my other friends, and we'll all have to plan it, and it would just be stressful. And the fact that she is from Kenya, made the activities a lot easier because she's more familiar with things. So it just made sense to go. And it was worth like the money as well. Like we were there for like 2 weeks. So it just made the most sense. Everything just made sense to do it. Um, yeah, and I knew Robina for a little bit. So I was just like, yeah, and I never traveled with her. So I was like, yeah, might as well see how it's gonna be. And then kind of like what Krista was saying, like we've met like virtually, so it's nice to like put names to faces and things like that and meet everybody in person. But yeah, nah, definitely a trip of a lifetime, and I'm glad I was invited.
Wow, no, that just blows my mind. You all, a lot of you had never met in real life. You had met through the virtual spaces of Twitter, all those things, and you somehow got together on this life-changing trip. That should just be a movie script in the making. All right, that really is something. That sounds amazing. Now, I'm curious now. Dr. Rabina, you had mentioned Kenya. You're from Kenya. Was there any other kind of special reason why Kenya was especially more specifically Nairobi, that was the place in which you kind of wanted this fully realization to meet, bring all these folks together?
So for me, I think about the feeling that I have, or the feelings that I have when I have visited Kenya, especially now in my adult years where I have a different level of appreciation for it. As I mentioned, like growing up, I grew up in feeling like I was like in between different like cultures and stuff. And so I didn't always have the deep appreciation of my homeland that I do now, because all of the programming that we receive about just all the different things about being Black and like, white systems are so obsessed with trying to like tear us down and have us feel negatively about where we're from, especially if it is a country that's considered like, or I guess Kenya being part of a dark continent, so to speak. I also as a child was kind of like struggling with like, okay, well, what do people think about it? Even folks within like the Black community. So I think as I grown in appreciation for my culture and like visiting it, and I have so much peace when I'm there and I enjoy it. And, there's a lot of emotions that come, but I had a feeling that my friends would also just appreciate and enjoy it, and that they were open to having an experience like that. And so because it is a place like Dr. Garrick was saying, it is a place that I am familiar with, and I'm also just like learning more of, I was like, okay, I can put some shit together. Like I can make it happen and be able to give folks an experience that's not just we did like turn up and stuff, but there was also other elements of the trip too that we were able to get to know each other better. As we mentioned, like I've met all of them in person before, but a lot of folks hadn't met each other in person. So just the connections that were made there, the conversations that we had, and I also was praying too that everybody would get whatever they needed out of the trip. So I think I just had like a good feeling about it. And of course that's home. So I wanted them to be able to experience it in a similar way to what I'm starting to experience it as an adult.
Absolutely. No, and Dr. Ravina, I'm gonna tell you right now, a lot of people listening to this and watching, they'll be like, I need a friend like her.
Look,
You just making up trips like
pay me and I'll be their friend, okay?
and he's inviting their homegirls, homeboys, everyone is invited. That's pretty amazing. My kudos really go to you for really organizing something like this. Now let's kind of go into now like obviously you said, I know for me being Nigerian, December, Dirty December, that's the place, like that's the time and place. Ghana, Nigeria, you go party, you go. It is like in like West Africa, you need stamina. 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. the next day, you're outside, right? So I know all about the kind of the fun part, the lit part that really goes along with a lot of West African countries specifically, because I've only been to really West Africa. But tell us a little bit now outside of the obviously the fun, the enthusiasm of going there, learning the culture. But I think more specifically, what did you all learn from your trip? I know we had talked kind of prior to a lot of it so much you all kept using the word life changing. Tell us a bit, and Dr. Taylor, let's start with you. What was kind of what did you learn from the trip, and how did it affect you both, I would say professionally, as you all are in some capacities, your PhD people, you're in academia, correct me if I'm wrong, but tell us a bit about how this trip really, what was so life changing that y'all are using those such a profound adjectives to describe your time.
Yeah, so like Dr. Robina said, she from just like the planner, the host was praying that all of the people that she invited, all of her friends, like we got what we needed. And I know for me personally, just doing the work that we do, being in mental health all together is a lot. And we're all in our own different sectors that brings about its own stressors. And so again, just given where I'm at in life, I'm an early career professional in a new job, like still in transition. I was definitely feeling like lots of burnout and heaviness of like just the weight of the world, the socio-political climate, just very heavy and very much like needing a break, like a chance to release.
Mm.
And for context, I know like all of our journeys look differently. But I I hadn't had like a true vacation since maybe summer 21, like right before I was getting ready to go on internship. And it was like maybe like a 4-day trip to Mexico. So I that's you can't even compare that to 2 weeks in Kenya. But again, just like given the work that we do and just type of person that we are, that I am, I've been going like back to back to back. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm exhausted. So I had been like literally counting down, like
Mm.
excited. So Dr. Robina hit me up like, back in the fall. I was like, hey, just what I'm doing for my 30th. Would you be interested? I'm just like, hell yeah, like count me in. Like Dr. Garrick said, I love to travel. Wanting to go to Africa was already like on my bucket list, but
Yeah.
I knew I couldn't. I have no interest, and I knew I couldn't have planned the trip the way that she did. Um, so yeah, so much excitement, anticipation. And again, I went on the trip with a very open mind because I would say, like she said, there was 19 of us in total. I had never
Wow.
been on a trip this large. And again, like Dr. Robina was the only one I had met. So
Wow.
again, I'm going on this trip with this friend I met on Twitter. Like we cool, she my homegirl, but we met on Twitter in the same
Tell them
like
what your mama
the
said.
Black psychology world. And I'm going to another continent and living with 17 different strangers. Like when I
Yes.
told my parents, my
Wow.
mama, she was like, what? Like literally looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm just like, I know it sounds crazy, but it's fine. Like everything's gonna be fine.
Mm.
And everything was fine. Like it was amazing. And for me, I was needing like rejuvenation, peace, healing, rest, like a reset. And I got all of that. And I can really appreciate the way that Dr. Robina planned the trip. It wasn't like oh yeah, we're coming here to celebrate me and my 30th. Like it's all about me. No, like there were moments throughout the trip where it was like, okay, like you want to go get your hair done, go get your hair done. Like you need a haircut, go do that. Like if you want to go to the market, like you can do that. There were free days.
Wow.
Where we could really like do what we want. And so everybody did their own thing. Like I know when we went to Diani, some people like got up and meditated on the beach or like ran on the beach. Um, we I can't remember the name of it, but we frequented this market up the street very, very often. And I know like there were some mornings I went there and like got breakfast and like journaled and meditated. And so there were moments where I was truly able to like soak it up and be like, dang, like I'm in Africa. There were so many moments where I was just like, I'm really in the motherland. Like, and Dr. Krista and I were texting about this a few weeks ago. I was like going through pictures and videos, and there was a moment when we were in the village, and we were walking into the village, and we were being greeted, and like so many people in the group became emotional, and it was just like, wow, like this is just so special just to be here and um experience this. Like I literally can't put it into words, but all of my friends have been like, some that I haven't caught up with, like, I can't wait to hear about Kenya. And I'm just like, it was truly life changing. I'm just like, y'all need to add Africa to your travel list. Like Europe is cool, but like you need to go to the motherland. And it's been about 2 months, like Dr. Garrick said earlier, and I'm still like riding on this high and energy that I got from the trip. And again, working in an academic setting, we go by semesters, and I'm just like, okay, like I got just enough to get me through the end of the semester, and it's the last week of classes. Finals week is here, so
Yeah.
like it was truly what I needed just at the right time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dr. Robina running her own brand trip / travel
She
agency. That
is.
is,
I'm like, girl, where's the website? Put the prices up. People like,
that's
you need to be
amazing.
selling these itineraries. Like,
That is, yeah, that is beyond phenomenal. No, I can just feel the energy through the screen. I mean, I'm not even with you all in real life, but I can really feel, like you said, you can't even put into words. I want to move on to you, Dr. Jonisha. Tell me a bit about in your work. I mean, how did a trip like this, how would you say it's affected you professionally, doing the type of work you do, and excuse me if I'm wrong, but do you work in populations with young and old people alike, or is it particularly young people? How would a trip like this back to Africa, how was this how has this really affected you?
So I'm trying to like cultivate my expertise in racial trauma. So there is a lot of exposure to, the harmful things that we see as far as Black folks getting killed, or even the slower methods and the ways of which they're like acculturating us, like Dr. Robina said. So in the school system, I was able to like go to the motherland and really internalize some of the things that are inherent to us. So even on the trip, like I know Dr. Robina from the Association of Black Psychologists, and we do a lot of work like on behalf of the community, and it is not paid work. Like it's labor of love. And so even while we were over there, people were hitting us up or hitting me up like, hey, can you do this project, can you do this? And Dr. Robina had to help me like craft a response that was nice, but that was very like strict, and saying like, I'm in the motherland, I'm trying to have a certain experience, and so I need this time to really reconnect with my roots. And I had a hell of a time getting over there. I actually missed my connecting flight, and there were so many like traveling troubles. And so I was like, I feel like spiritually something is trying to keep me from going home. And so now that makes me want to like get there 10 times faster and like try to really get the experience that I'm trying to go after, which I don't really know what I was after. But my birthday actually happens to be 2 days before Dr. Anwanga. And so I was like, for me, like Dr. Garrick said, this was something that was like gifted to us, right? Like it literally fell into our laps. The
Yeah.
fact that she put this trip together and offered, that shared experience for us. Cause like a lot of my colleagues, going to Africa was on my to-do list. And I was like, what a great way to like start traveling more in this kind of juncture of my life. while I'm turning 28 around other people that are doing similar works. So I feel like going there, I was able to really like internalize the things that I was trying to teach some of my scholars, which is that resting is okay and that we're not, our worth is not measured by our level of productivity or by our academic achievements and accolades and stuff like that. And so I felt like just going there, especially after all the trials and tribulations and missing my connecting flight and having to purchase 2 different flights, and it was just all this madness. I was able to really internalize like that. Sometimes I need to just slow down and like there's not a lot that I can do. There are a lot of things out of my control, and I have to kind of cultivate this sense of emotional discipline because there's a lot of stuff that will try and like deter me from the goals that I have, whether that's chasing peace or chasing, whatever spiritual things that I was going to get from Africa. So I feel like I was able to put into practice what I was trying to teach Black scholars and other Black people that did experience like racial trauma by going home. It was literally a homecoming. I know that word's super overused, but that's what it was like for a lot of us.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Jonisha. The idea, like you said, I like that idea of it is a homecoming. I mean, it really is a almost reconciliation. It sounds like almost some of you are describing in your minds. Even though maybe you may not even be have know your roots if they are where specifically in Africa, but there's still that connection that you really have. Dr. Krista, tell me a little bit about, did you feel a sense of community when you were there? I think there seems to be, whether people see the reality or not, there is a bit of a division between African American peoples versus continental African people, right? Do you, now, Dr. Krista, I don't know if you're African or African American or where your culture lies, but did you feel a sense of community when you were there? Are you Kenyan yourself, or are you not Kenyan? Or please do tell.
I feel like I'm Kenyan. I mean, I'm
There you
everything
go.
from the continent at this point. I mean,
There you
and
go.
that's actually one thing that I left with, like, this whole land is ours. Like, this whole piece of land is ours. And so, yes, I definitely felt a sense of community. And I think a lot of that was rooted in like the spiritual joy that's present
Mm.
there, and so folks didn't know where we were from, right? We Black, like we have brown skin, and we are all family. And I think, we felt that love and we felt that open arms, like, welcome home, hello brother, hello sister, like you're a sibling to us. I definitely felt that. And I think that also just lends to the conversations that I ended up having with a lot of people like from Kenya who were living there. Having those vulnerable, open conversations, I got to kind of unpack the amount of misinformation that is translated across African American people in America, I should say, and the continent, and it's by design, and so just by having these conversations, I got to understand like what is the perspective of Black folks on the continent, and what is the perspective of Black folks here in America or Black Americans, and where's the disconnect? Because like you mentioned, there has been a history of divisiveness. And so I really got to understand like, okay, whoa, like you all think this is our experience and we all think this is your experience, and none of that is true, And so by having those open conversations about, our own lived experience, like there's actually a lot of similarities that we have, and we need to really talk about that. We need to talk about like what our truths are. And I think those conversations are what are allowing that will kind of diminish and mitigate a lot of that divisiveness, because we know that there's healing and collective liberation, and that's what we need. Like that's our goal. And so I've left feeling like, okay, this is going to be sort of my mission going back home, is to bridge that gap, however I can, and unlock sort of like the consciousness amongst African American folks and people who do come to America from the continent and vice versa.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for that, Dr. Krista. Now, Dr. Jonisha, I know you do have to run pretty soon, but I want to ask you this one last final question for you. What is the biggest takeaway that you are now bringing back to your community in the States now that you've came back from this life-changing trip?
I think that it's that even though we are separated by like miles and years and like history and all this different things that white people try to do to us, that at the end of the day, we're still African people, and some of those practices that we see culturally in the motherland are still inherent in us. So like I was noticing a lot of similarities between some things that I might see in America
Mm.
on the continent, or hearing about some of the cultural practices that the tribes in Africa have, or the folks in Africa and like Nairobi have. And so I felt like even though there is this like really diligent mission that white folks have, we called them shaitans when we were on the continent meeting demons. Even though there is this mission that they have, they can never take what is ours, which is that we are African people, regardless of, you know, the history that they try to tell us is ours or that is not ours. So that was like the biggest takeaway.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Now, swinging it back to you, Dr. Robina, tell us, now you're back in the States. This trip really is this really was your dream come true, really bringing all these amazing folks together across the digital landscape, across the country. What, I mean, for you, I mean, what is, now that you're back in the States, I mean, how has this trip truly kind of now affected your mindset? I mean, you tell me a little bit about where you're the curator, you're the architect, the chief architect of this whole project coming together, and hearing all your friends now, hearing them say these really amazing things that have touched them so deeply. What do you now take away as the one that really brought everyone together?
I feel like there's so much I could say about this, and we probably talked about this so many times throughout the trip. Like, we had all the meals we had were like family style meals, like lunch, dinner together, breakfast. I think most times people kind of did whatever worked for them based on the time they were waking up. But a lot of the conversations we had, I remember one in particular where we were talking about how I tend to feel this sense of like deep sadness when I think about how um a lot of a lot of my people have been like kidnapped, raped, exploited, taken from like where we were supposed to be, and that having that connection. So like Dr. Jojo was saying, being separated by miles and history and time and now waters and things like that, how that has impacted us to the point where we have created these divisions between us. And I think for me, something that I think that I'm grateful for is, one, that I have people who are just open to experiences such as this, and who have a deep longing to be able to like work towards liberation, and like for us to continue to raise our consciousness, to decolonize our mindsets, to decolonize the way that we approach daily life. Of course, we are still living and working and breathing within a very capitalistic and heteropatriarchal and, type of system. And also, we are very intentional about trying to do that in ways that still serve us best, and doing that in ways that are, as we could call it, like the African way, like ways that are just intuitive for us as Black people, that can help us, lead to healing, instead of trying to fit into these boxes or these systems that whiteness has created that don't actually work for us. And so as we were having those conversations, it's realizing like, oh, okay, we've had these different experiences where people our age and older may have misconceptions about Kenya, about Africa, based off of the miseducation that we've received here in the US. And now we're able to experience it for ourselves and be like, oh, I mean, it all makes sense. Like, they've been lying to us about pretty much everything, including this. And so now we get to kind of experience it and create our own narrative about it. And you can't take away somebody's lived experience of about something that they have gone through or witnessed or whatever that is. So I was particularly excited to have, because there was other folks on the trip who are also in kind of like a mental health space. And then folks like my brother and his friends were there too. And that was so beautiful to have them there. And they're like in their early 20s. And a couple of them have Caribbean roots. And a few of them are were born in the States. And so, well, all of us were born in the States, but a few of them are Black American. And so it was beautiful for all of us to just have that experience together and like this almost like intergenerational love that we were able to share and wisdom, like going both ways, being able to talk about things and kind of help almost to heal each other in that process as we're talking about it. Because sometimes I will see, at the age that they're at, there's a lot of folks who just don't have very positive views about our siblings in Africa or our siblings in the Caribbean or other areas where Black folks are, like Brazil or whatever it is. And so for them being open to that and experiencing that, it was really beautiful for me. And I think something that I'm taking away from it is being more open to speaking about our cultural similarities. And I know a lot of times there's always like these diaspora wars that come up. And honestly, for me, really what it does is just show us that there actually are a lot of similarities with the food, with the language, with the like everything that comes up in that. It's like we're so similar. We just are very creative people, and we have a million different ways that we change music, change dances, change foods, change the way we talk, like our accents, like when everything about us is like we have a million different ways that we can express ourselves and connect with each other. So for me, it's about kind of continuing to cultivate that. And I had a lot of moments too on the trip where I was like just feeling very inspired and thinking of ways that I want to integrate that type of experience and that type of feeling in the present moment and where I am. Because while it is hard to tap into that spiritual joy that Dr. Krista mentioned, this is where we are right now, and we need to be able to function in this space and do the type of work that we can. Otherwise, we will run ourselves into the grave, unfortunately, like a lot of other Black people who do this work who have not made it past 50 because they burn out and because they don't have like moments like this where it gives them a little bit more hope to kind of keep moving forward and a direction of like, okay, where can I put my energy towards? And there is like a reason that we're continuing to live and be here. So yeah, for me, it's about continuing to cultivate that community where I am and find ways to help myself and other people be able to live in that space where they feel like their gifts are flourishing and that they can be able to experience joy wherever they are. And I know this other piece that we talked about too at some point while we were there was we are like connected to thousands of ancestors who have been through the most vile shit that you could ever go through in this world. And we're here and we're running the world, like in terms of the cult, like what we put out, the stuff that we do as Black people is so, they attempt to duplicate it, imitate it, whatever, but we're the ones who keep people laughing. We keep people just, continuing to go. So us being able to hold on to that in our hearts, knowing like, this is what I come from. Like I come from this and I see that, I feel it when I'm there and I can take that back to where I am right now, I think is, that's just something that I've been thinking about and that helps me keep going too.
Absolutely. That was so beautiful. No, and I really do want to tell y'all, I really do appreciate what you all have been able to cultivate here, especially together. Y'all are young, you're highly successful people, you all have advanced degrees. Unfortunately, in our kind of society, especially for our younger generation, they don't see that. They don't see people that look like them, little Black girls and boys and children. They don't see Black people that look like them, that are smart, intelligent, have amazing careers, positive, and they're going to Africa, right? That's just unheard of. They unfortunately don't see that representation enough. So I really think, you all are doing such a great service, even, appearing on this show and just really living your lives to the fullest in this type of way. I think it's such a beautiful thing. So I really commend you all. And I want you to know how much of an important act of service this really is, just being able to share this story. And speaking of that, I want to ask you, Dr. Garrick, tell us a bit about, for those that, like I said, you have children of this generation. Maybe they don't understand. They don't have that connection to Africa, right? Their African roots, maybe they don't have the finances, right? It's expensive to fly to a different continent, right? How do you think folks can connect to their African roots, Dr. Garrick, even just here, even if they can't travel physically to somewhere like Kenya? What are some things, people can do? And it doesn't have to necessarily be younger children, also people of all ages, it's definitely not, it's economics are definitely a standpoint for a lot of people, being able to fly, time, maybe ability, disability, how can people really connect to their African roots?
Yeah, no, it's definitely pretty penny for a flight. Uh, but I feel like ultimately, like in regards to connecting, is really just being curious. I think
Mm,
ultimately that's like, in my opinion, the foundation of like of knowledge, of awareness, of everything, is that innate curiosity of, what is that, like from just curiosity about the music, about the food, about the people, about the language, is really just being curious. I think just picking something in, because at the end of the day, like if you want to connect to this, to connect with your African roots and things like that, you probably may not be as knowledgeable of different areas of that. So I feel like just picking an area and just looking it up, picking an area and talking to somebody within that culture.
yeah.
Picking an area and, reading about that culture, picking an area and, watching a documentary about it, I think is ultimately just really just going, just tapping back into the curiosity of it and seeing where you go from there. I feel like sometimes we try to, going back to what Dr. Robina was saying about, the misconception about, when it comes to the whole diaspora wars and things like that, it comes from a lot of miseducation, a lot of ignorant people, a lot of, things from like, Eurocentric views of like, and propaganda of just things that are just not true. And I think just going back to that curiosity and just educating yourself about who we really are and being Black is powerful. And going, and then even within that, right, like when we talk about Africa, like it's there's so many different cultures within the continent, right? Like, you said you're Nigerian, and Robina's Kenyan, you got Ghana, you got all these different countries within Africa in itself that have their own unique, diverse cultures. And I think, if anything, just picking a continent, right? And you just go from there. So like I've been now to say I've been to Kenya, and I definitely want to go back to Africa. Now I'm trying to figure out where in Africa I want to figure out, and I definitely want to be more intentional of saying like the country, because I feel like that helps with the
Yeah.
specificity of like what you want to learn and where, because I feel like Africa is just so broad, right? Like, you just want to go to Africa, like where, so I think just figuring out what country you're curious about and just diving more into that culture, because it's all, unique and it's all diverse, despite the fact that we're all African, right? So I think just tapping back into the curiosity and just letting your imagination take you from there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Taylor, tell me, now that you've been on this trip, now you've been lived in Kenya 2 weeks, that is, I almost say that's damn near like citizenship. That's bigger than a holiday, really. So tell me a little bit, what do you think is probably, now that you're back in the States, what is the biggest misconception you think people have about just the whole continent of Africa? What's the biggest misconception you think people have?
I think the biggest misconception is that it's not modern.
Mm,
Like when I told people like, oh yeah, I'm going to Africa, I'm going to Kenya, they're like, oh, how's that gonna be? And I'm just like, what you mean? Or even like talking to people after being back, they're like, oh, like did you stay in huts? I'm just like, no. Like there is the
oh, wow.
village area, but I'm just like, the United States has just like screwed us over so much, like with just the propaganda and just misinformation. Like, so I think that is a huge misconception, misperception about Africa or even Kenya specifically. It's like very modern. I'm actually like planning on moving there. So yeah, like I will not be retiring in the US.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. Dr. Krista, I'm curious, what is the biggest misconception people have about just Africa as the continent?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Dr. Taylor was saying. People think that it's not modern, and that the morale is super low, and that everyone is just like impoverished, and it is and there are places of poverty, right? Just like there are in the US. Hello, like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And um so yeah, I think that that's a misconception, and it makes me think about growing up, even how generationally, like, we don't talk about this, but I'm gonna go there. Like, I remember my parents being like, you need to eat the food on your plate because there are kids in Africa who don't have the food. And you know, now I'm like, it's kids around the block that don't have like, this is
Yeah.
not a unique issue to the continent of Africa or any country in Africa, you
Yeah.
know. And in my conversations with even Kenyan folks there's a misconception about the United States, where
Mm.
this is the land of opportunity, and Black people have everything at their fingertips, and they're not seeing the police brutality, the poverty, the miseducation. They're not seeing those pieces where we're fighting 3, 4 times as hard to be to get the one slot that's allotted to us, right? From whatever the DEI initiative is. You know, like, that part isn't being shown on the other hand. And so when I was talking earlier about just like the disconnect, I'm like, whoa, like, it just opened the door to like where the misunderstandings are lying. And we have been fed, like Dr. Taylor says, so much misinformation generationally that our parents have even contributed to this poor negative narrative about our homeland, you
Yeah.
know. And I'm sure it's been the same, you know, in reverse, generationally, on the continent, which is why people are like, I need to get out of here and go to the States or go west or go to Europe or whatever. And then they get here and they're like, whoa, this is not what I thought it was, you know. And so yeah, I think there's definitely those issues on both pieces of land, and we really got to work hard to disrupt that. Like, we really have to.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for that. Now this question is open to the floor. Anyone feel free to answer in whichever way you would like. Tell us, why is it important to travel and find this type of clarity in reconnection back to land specifically? Obviously, you all traveled thousands of miles by air, overseas to go find a connection back to land. Why is it so important to find this type of reconnection? What is it? Why is this of such importance? Why should it matter to people? Why should it matter to reconnect back to roots, whether you realize their roots or not? Why is this so important?
I can go first. Is that cool? I'll never forget just coming back, and like Dr. Taylor said, yeah, I'm not retiring in a Western country either. Like, that's dead. Like, just being in our homeland and experiencing that peace, that spiritual settledness, um, is something that I'm like, no wonder all of the years of my life, my spirit has felt unsettled and I couldn't articulate that. And I'm like, because this is not our land. It isn't. Like, yes, my ancestors helped build this country up. Nonetheless, this is still not my land, you know? And I think when we think back to like our ancestral practices, like how we nurture the land, right? As Indigenous people to the continent, we nurture the land, we value it, it's sacred to us. And I think there's a piece in all of us that we didn't get a chance to really, growing up in America, I should say, I didn't have that experience of like unlocking that knowledge and that feeling, right? Because I hadn't been to the continent. And so there was something in me, and it's so like, I don't even know if I can explain it even today, that the connectedness to the land brought up. And there was a sense of peace and spiritual peace that I felt like I had been looking for. You can ask the group. I remember we're driving and I just like broke down into tears. I
Wow.
didn't even know what was happening. I was just like looking out onto the land. I was like, oh my, like, I don't know. I can't explain it,
Yeah.
but like I broke down into tears, but whatever it was, like it was healing for me. And I was like, I feel like I'm at home. And when you feel like you're at home, you're safe, right? And when you feel like you're safe, your stress levels are down, you feel connected, you're more productive, you glow.
Yeah.
And so that I think is just really, really, really important. And that's why there is something that happens when you're connected to the land physically, that it really does initiate a piece of healing in you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Well, oh, go ahead, Doctor.
Oh no, yeah, I'm just gonna be quick. But like for me, it's just like, there's more to life than just America, right?
Yeah.
Like it's when you're in America, America tends to have this idea that, it's the center of the world, right? Just try to always be the center of attention, always try to be number one in just all these areas, and which we're not, you know. And there's so much more than just going to Miami and Vegas and LA, and just like when you take the time to just like immerse yourself in a culture, in your culture, it gives you that, what Dr. Krista said, that it initiates that sort of healing. And it's a feeling that you really can't, it's hard to explain and hard to really describe outside of just feeling it, right? And you don't really notice that until you're actually experiencing it. But when you're in America, you don't realize how draining it can be just being in this country. The
Yes.
socio-political stuff, but just like here, like when we talk about the land, right? Just being here in America is just like it's a lot. It's a lot of like bad energy and history here. Like the beginning of this country was off of negative vibes. You know what I'm saying? So just going back home, going back to your roots, and just being able to just be, right? Not really do anything, but just be and embrace, gives you that kind of healing feeling and that rejuvenating feeling that makes you feel refreshed to come back to the States and, and survive essentially.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else would like to share on that thought?
Yeah, I would add to that, as I alluded to, that as African Black people, we have a very unique relationship, I would say, with space and place. And in some ways, I think that it has a much deeper spiritual connection with identity for us. And I know like sociologists and anthropologists have probably studied this much deeper. So this is just kind of me talking off of like my experiences and kind of what I've seen too, is that when it comes to just like us as indigenous people to wherever we've been, or even like you could say indigenous folks here before white folks came and violated and didn't have like a sense of honor, or they didn't treat the land or the people as sacred, like that is, for me, like that's just a violation. Or, I know they like to throw around like religion, that's quite blasphemous, because this is something that God has created, and then you want to then exploit it and kind of flip it to be something that it wasn't made to be. So I think for us as Black people, we do have a very, even though it has been just like polluted through like colonization and programming and things like that, we have a very sacred relationship with space and place. And so it makes sense that when we are in certain locations, like it evokes certain emotions and we have that connection. Like we didn't just stay in Nairobi, we went to a few other places. So we went to like the coast, and there's different culture there. We went to Masai Mara, and that's a tribe that's different from my tribe. But even when the Masai people come and dance and sing, like I feel a different level of connection too, to where it's just maybe the humming, or I don't fully understand the language. Same when I listen to South African Zulu people singing, I'm like, I don't know what y'all are saying, but amen. Like, I feel it. Like, so it's just that what it evokes in you. And when we are able to like Dr. Krista said, when our stress levels, that cortisol, when it's down, we're not,
Yes.
as alert or having to like be super in fight or flight mode. You can just be present and you're able to connect in a different way because you're being just more mindful, or like Dr. G said, you're just being like you're there. You're not having to think too much about it, but you're able to connect because it's something that's within us, that's there. And I know we often will talk about, just like within Black psychology spaces, about our identities and the different ways that that kind of comes out. As Dr. Jojo said, like, we're African people, we have the bodies and this mask and stuff, but our spirit is African. And so wherever we are, we're going to try to kind of pull that connection. And this also just kind of goes back to that question you asked about how can we cultivate these spaces if we can't fly, spend that money to go there. But I think of the things that we were doing that were very communal, which are what we do as African people, like that collectivism that we tend to lean to, and that just we have in our nature. Is if we're able to find moments like this to just get together, to talk, to share joys, to share sadness, to exchange information. Those are the things that they wanted to keep from our ancestors during times of enslavement. Like, no, y'all can't sit up here and chop it up, because you're going to start to create like routes to escape, or you're going to start to get smart and start to read and start to understand what we're really trying to do to you all. So I think it's very important for us to have safe places, and to, if we can't go back and physically connect with those spaces, to create those spaces where we are, so that we can be able to experience what it's like to just be connected with each other and be unified.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Anyone else? All right then. Well, y'all, this has been such an amazing conversation. Again, I just want to give you all and just a big kudos to you all for being able to find this space, find each other digitally in the digital space first and foremost. Twitter, who thunk it? Who would have thunk it? And I just want to give y'all a big round of applause, because that just what I'm hearing today, I can feel your energy. Yes, very divine. I can feel it through the screen. I can really feel that this was something that really, really impacted you for the better, and I'm sure you're gonna take for the rest of your very long lives. So, again, I kudos to you all, and I'm so for our listeners listening. I know you're doing them such a great deal of service and satisfaction, and I'm sure you're inspiring people to go to Kenya, go to Nigeria, go to Ghana, go to the continent, really. And so Dr. Taylor, I actually want to end off with you. What is the one thing you want folks to know, just the world to know, as they're listening to us now speaking? What do you want people to know about just Africa? We talked about there's so many misconceptions, so many so much we've been told that's not true. What do you just want the world to know about Africa?
The word that's coming to my mind is healing. And I feel that, even just talking to Dr. Robina as like a native of the land, a Kenyan, and just like talking to other people that have visited Africa and aren't from the continent, they're like, like it's healing, like it's transformative. And I'm just like, okay, y'all being dramatic, but no, like, and even when I explain, like describe my experience to people, I'm just like, y'all, like it was truly healing and empowering. And what everyone has touched on already, like I it was what I needed right on time. And I have like more of a drive and a passion to do this collective liberation here, and like educate Black folks about what Africa is and looks like, and like what Dr. Robina said, that like our people were there like fighting, and we still over here fighting, but it's all connected. So to answer your question, I want them to know that there's so much healing and power just in the land, just like touching the soil, and just physically being there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Now, again, a big thank you to y'all for coming on the show. I just want to end it with everyone. Tell us any social media tags or websites so we can continue to check out some of the amazing work that y'all are doing. Please do share any type of social media. Dr. Krista, we can start with you, then we can go around if you have any social media to promote, anywhere we check out all of your amazing work.
Yeah, so I'll shout out my organization. We just had our second annual summit in Atlanta, Thursday and Friday. Yeah, we had almost 400 Black school psychologists gather in a space. Healing Liberation took place. We had Dr. Tama Bryant as our keynote speaker. So I'll shout out my organization. It is the Black School Psychologist Network. You can find us on our website at www.bspninc.com. You can also follow us on all social media platforms at the Black SPS. And if you get there, you'll find me. So I'm there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Anyone else? Dr. Garrick, Dr. Rabina, Dr. Taylor, please do.
Yeah, you can follow my organization. I co-founded a mental health organization. It's a grassroots organization. We're gonna be a nonprofit by the fall. It's called Psych Me Out. It's on Instagram, PSYCHME.OUT. Or you can go on our website, psychmeout.org.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Rabina.
Yeah, y'all can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at JRologist, so JROLOGIST. And I actually have been working on creating a business that incorporates this aspect of it. So doing this trip for my people was a really good way to kind of just like kick it off and see like, okay, can I really do this thing? So yeah, y'all can follow me there at JRologist to just stay in tune about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you can find me on Twitter at Taylor J. Langley, first name, middle initial, last name.
Awesome. All right. Again, a big thank you to all of our amazing guests. This was a phenomenal conversation. And thank you all for tuning into Black Mental Health Matters. To support our show, please visit bmhm.org. Again, that's bmhm.org. Now, for the latest conversations on Black mental health, please join us next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye, everyone.